Light was an ugly, disgusting, worthless, and a miserable loner, abandoned by his friend one after another and left behind in a ruined farm, growing fruits and swinging a sword too heavy for him to lift. Yet the only thing that kept him alive were his tiny dreams of becoming an adventurer. One day, in a moment of despair, he ate a second skill fruit that was supposed to kill him instantly, but the impossible happened. He didn't die. Instead, a hidden power erupted inside him, surpassing the limits of mankind. Still, he chose to conceal it, appearing to everyone as nothing more than a pathetic failure. While walking alongside his friend Lena on their way to the sacred tree of skills, his heart pounded with excitement, praying that fortune would smile upon him this time, that he might obtain a skill such as dual swordsmanship or swift step. The long-awaited day had finally arrived, the day his dream would begin. He glanced toward Lena and asked her what skill she wished for. She faltered, flustered, before replying that all she desired was to remain by his side, that the two of them might become powerful adventurers in one team. Anxiety lingered upon her face, for none could know what skill awaited until one partook of the fruit, and fear gnawed at her heart that fate might separate them. But Light smiled warmly to reassure her. They would never part, and together they would become the strongest adventurers in the world. They entered the church where Light stood gathering the fruits, but sorrow overtook him, for this was far from the dream he longed for. To become a fruit farmer? This was not what he had wished. To understand how this came to be, the tale carried us back 3 months earlier. At that time, the Holy Sister had explained that the skill granted by the skill fruit could never be changed, and that none were permitted to eat more than one fruit in their lifetime. She spoke sternly, warning that anyone who dared consume a second would perish instantly, for countless heroes had attempted such folly and found only death as their end. Lena froze in terror, for she had never known of this law, but Light sought to ease her worry, affirming that every great adventurer owed his strength to fortune's blessing of a rare and wondrous skill. With trembling hands, Lena approached and ate her fruit. Heat surged through her body, and a radiant glow surrounded her. Her skill was revealed: Holy Sword Saint. Astonishment spread across the Holy Sister's face, for this was a skill of utmost rarity, one that appeared only once every 10 years, a blessing she had long dreamed of seeing bestowed upon someone. Then came Light's turn. He consumed the fruit with eager anticipation, but his hope was extinguished in an instant when his skill appeared: Fruit Master. With cold detachment, the Holy Sister explained that this ability granted nothing more than the power to harvest fruits in abundance and hasten their growth. Light collapsed to the floor in ruin, his dream of adventure crumbling to ashes. Lena rushed to him, striving to comfort him. She told him she would plant the fruits with him, that together they would own a great farm, but her words displeased the Holy Sister, who cried out in anger. The skill of the Holy Sword Saint must not be wasted. It is a rare gift, and it must be wielded to save the world. Without hesitation, she seized Lena and dragged her away with force, leading her toward the holy city. During that time, Light toiled upon his farm, employing his skill to cultivate fruits in great abundance. He harvested vast quantities and sold them for coin, yet whenever his eyes fell upon his possessions, he felt them hollow, for his true dream had never been to live as a farmer. As he walked the streets, frustration gnawed at him ever more deeply, especially when he caught sight of a notice proclaiming that Lena had advanced to the rank of C. A fire reignited within his heart, and he resolved that he too would become an adventurer like her. From that moment, he trained without pause, exhausting himself until he collapsed to the ground. It was there that a young girl named Ayla approached him, offering him water and telling him that their meal was ready. It was then revealed that Ayla was an orphan, and the village elder had asked Light to take her in. From that day onward, she lived with him, sharing the labor of the farm and sitting together with him at mealtime. During one such meal, she asked about the harvest, and he replied that it was good, especially the so-called skill fruits. Puzzled by the name, she asked what he meant, and Light explained that it was a new variety he had begun cultivating, for he sought to earn enough to purchase a new sword. He added sternly that these fruits were stored in the crates behind her, and none were to be touched without his leave. Ayla faltered, lowering her voice with guilt. She had already used some of them in preparing dinner. Light froze, his mind instantly recalling the Holy Sister's warning that whosoever dared to eat a second fruit would die. Pain surged through his body and he collapsed, certain that his end had come. But time passed, and death did not claim him. On the contrary, a new skill awakened within him: Sword King. At that very moment, Ayla too was seized by a sudden pain, her body suffused with a mysterious glow, and her own skill was revealed: Adventurer Appraisal. She tested Light's status and told him that his first skill, Fruit Master, had granted him immunity against the poisons of the fruits, and that was why he had survived the second fruit. Not only had he endured, it had granted him an additional strength. On the following day, the two of them set out for the Adventurers Guild. Light's heart was bright with joy, for at last he was drawing nearer to his dream. The guild explained that great rewards awaited those who completed quests, yet during the registration of his data, Light bumped shoulders with an arrogant adventurer who mocked him as nothing more than a fruit seller, declaring that the market now belonged to the guild. Light ignored him, which only fueled the man's fury, and he struck with all his might. But Light parried the blow with ease, leaving the adventurer dumbfounded. Soon after, Light and Ayla embarked upon their first mission, the hunting of slime monsters. Guided by Ayla to their lairs, Light slew them with ease and gathered the evidence. But suddenly, a voice cried out behind them. They rushed toward the sound, only to find that same arrogant adventurer and his team locked in battle with a massive ogre, one they could not defeat. The adventurers scattered in terror, yet the ogre turned its wrath upon Light and Ayla, charging at them with murderous force. Light evaded its savage strikes, then drew his sword and leapt high into the air. Summoning all of his strength, he unleashed a mighty cleaving strike, rending the ogre in two. The beast fell dead, and the adventurers who bore witness stood frozen in shock. Returning to the guild, Light delivered the slimes and presented the ogre's horn as proof of its defeat. All who beheld it were struck with awe, realizing that he had not only saved himself and Ayla, but had rescued them all. At that moment, the chatter of the guild hall was silenced by the entrance of the Holy Sword Party, and the eyes of all the adventurers, especially those of rank C, turned in awe. At the forefront appeared their leader, Grouse, renowned as the man of light speed, and beside him stood the towering giant Eric, the fire mage Sarum, and with them the holy sword Saint Lena. With desperate eagerness, Light rushed toward Lena, telling her that he too had become an adventurer, and wished to share with her all that had transpired. But Lena turned her face aside, ignoring him completely, and coldly remarked that he must have mistaken her for someone else, then departed. Light froze where he stood, stricken with disbelief. Time passed, and Ayla sat beside him, seeking to ease his sorrow. It was then that a cloaked figure approached, offering him a cup of water. At first he did not notice, but soon realized it was Lena herself. She apologized for her earlier behavior, explaining that to be seen with him in front of Grouse would bring danger, and that they must never be spotted together. She asked him softly what he was doing there. He told her that both he and Ayla had become adventurers, and he recounted all that had happened. How he had become the only one in the world to possess two skills, and how soon he would reach her level. Yet he could not restrain himself from asking why she had ignored him so coldly. Lena sighed and told him that she was compelled to work with the party, for all of them were bound to obey the Holy Sister's orders. Light remembered the Holy Sister from the church, and when he asked if she was the same, Lena confirmed it. To Light it was strange, for the Holy Sword Party was supposed to be extraordinary heroes, not mere tools of command. It was then that Lena began to recount what had happened 2 months earlier. They had faced a monstrous serpent, and Grouse had ordered Sarum to burn it with fire. Sarum obeyed, but a strong wind carried the flames into the heart of the farmers' fields, incinerating them entirely. Lena had sought to intervene and save the villagers, but Grouse forbade her. Unable to stand idle, she saved their lives with her own hands, though their lands were lost forever. When she rushed to inform the Holy Sister, she was met with a chilling reply. What matters is that the beast was slain. That is all that counts. Hearing this, Light urged her to abandon the party and join his team instead, but she could not, and sorrow welled in her eyes. She apologized, then turned and left him behind. Afterward, Light returned to claim the reward for his first quest. There, Ayla suggested that he challenge Grouse himself. Meanwhile, on the other side of the guild, Grouse was boasting before a crowd of admiring girls, telling them of his hunt of a ferocious bear, how Sarum's flames had held the beast at bay, and how he himself had slain it with a single strike of his blade. He showered himself and his party with praise, while expressions of admiration bloomed across the faces of those around him. But suddenly, a guild clerk entered, informing him of a complaint lodged by the townsfolk, whose homes had been burned down in their reckless pursuits. He scoffed at her words and sneered, "Leave them to their misery. Expel them from the guild." And as he dismissed the matter with contempt, Light stormed in, demanding that he release Lena from his party. Grouse ignored him and laughed mockingly, then ordered the guild's guards to throw him out. Yet Sarum drew near and whispered a warning. It would be better for Grouse to tread carefully, for if the Holy Sister learned of his conduct, she would never allow him to serve as an adventurer in the city again. On the following day, Lena remained troubled by Light's words until she resolved to face the matter directly. She went straight to Grouse and declared that she would leave his party. At once, Sarum interjected with a mocking tone, "Do you not realize we are the greatest and most powerful party?" But Lena replied with a cold voice, "I do not like the way you conduct your work." With that, she turned her back and walked away. Grouse would not permit her to leave. He blocked her path and drew his sword. Lena gripped her own blade in defense, but he only smiled cruelly and said, "Even with the speed and skill of the Holy Sword Saint, you could never defeat me. Put your sword away." Then, without warning, he struck her with a brutal slap across the face, adding sharply, "I will not hear the word withdrawal from you again." As they departed the guild, Light stood firmly in Grouse's way and declared with bold defiance, "I will not abandon Lena. I promised her that we would be in one team together." He drew his sword and challenged, "Fight me, and if I win, Lena will join my party." Grouse laughed in scorn, agreeing only to make him an example before the crowd. Yet he set one condition. If Light lost, he would be exiled from the guild forever. Lena panicked, begging him not to accept, for she knew defeating Grouse was impossible. Swiftly, Ayla used her appraisal skill, revealing that Grouse possessed the skill of light speed, a power that closed the gap between him and his foes in an instant. Grouse gave no quarter. He struck with relentless fury, his attacks raining down upon Light from every direction. Light struggled desperately to defend himself, yet his opponent's speed and might were overwhelming. Gathering his strength for a final blow, Grouse shattered Light's sword and advanced toward Lena, forcing her to swear lifelong obedience to him in exchange for sparing Light's life. But rage blazed within Light's heart. Seizing a magical broom from a nearby adventurer, he focused every ounce of his power on his foe's weakness. With a sudden burst, he lunged forward and struck Grouse across the face, felling him unconscious before all who watched. Turning towards Saren, Light spoke with cold severity. "If you so much as approach Lena, or any member of my team, I will destroy you all." Before the eyes of the gathered adventurers, Lena declared her official departure from Grouse's party and announced her joining of Light's team. Together they returned to the farm, harvesting fruits and selling them for great profit. But soon, a message from the Holy Sister reached Lena, summoning her at once to explain why she had left the Holy Sword Party. When she refused, the reply was merciless. She had been stripped of the position granted by Grouse's party and had lost her rank of C. Undeterred, Lena resolved to seek quests on her own. Yet the guild forced them into menial tasks, exterminating rats in the city's sewers and repairing the homes of the poor. Light understood that this was the Holy Sister's vengeance, but Lena voiced no protest. Instead, she accepted with joy, for at last she could help those in need, even if she earned nothing. Together they journeyed to the capital, dividing the work among themselves, gathering materials to restore the houses, and completing the extermination of the rats. When their labor was finished, they received only a meager reward. Yet Lena's heart was filled with profound happiness. For the first time, she had been able to do something for the people. It was then that Light proposed they choose a name for their party. After a brief discussion, they settled upon the name Luxeria, meaning the incomplete light. There, the three of them vowed that they would become the strongest adventurers in the city, and that they would fight for the people. Elsewhere, the Holy Sister conversed with her assistant, who voiced her astonishment. How could she assign a quest of rank C to Light and Lena? The Holy Sister smiled wickedly and replied, "I have no desire to lose any member of the Holy Sword Party, but this mission is perilous, and also the perfect chance to be rid of them." On the following day, Light and his companions arrived at the guild, where the clerk informed them of their new mission, to investigate the abandoned manor of Count Montes. She explained that 2 months earlier, adventurers had been dispatched to measure the density of monsters within the place, but they vanished one by one. Each time, the guild sent new adventurers to uncover the fate of the missing. They too disappeared, until the number of the lost had reached 18, warriors of rank A and B alike. She handed them a list of the missing names, and Lena froze as her eyes fell upon two familiar ones, Bork and Shara, who had aided her in the earliest days of her adventuring life. Grief clouded her face. When Light asked what was known of this manor, she answered, "It was built 30 years ago by a man who amassed great fortune from his adventures. None ever knew his true skill, but after his death, the manor turned into a city of ghosts." Lena, burning with anger, cried out in refusal, "High-ranked adventurers have failed there, and we have barely begun our journey. How could they send us to such a place?" But the clerk responded firmly, "These are orders from high authorities within the guild, and you must carry them out." Unlike her, Light was eager, deciding boldly to take on the mission. They mounted their horses and set forth toward the manor. Fog thickened the path, blinding their sight. Suddenly, Isla's foot slipped upon the mountainside, and as Light rushed to save her, they all tumbled downward together. At the last moment, he drew his sword and lessened the force of their fall, so they landed upon the earth unharmed. Yet no time was granted to catch their breath. Monsters swarmed them from every direction. Light charged forward, cutting many down, but Lena cried out, "Stop! These are adventurers!" Swiftly, Ayla used her appraisal, and discovered that the missing adventurers had been transformed into zombies possessing archery skills. The sheer multitude forced Light back in shock at the thought of striking down his fellow comrades. Before he realized it, one nearly sank its teeth into his flesh from behind, but Lena intervened, slaying it at the last instant, then hurriedly drove them toward the manor. They pushed open the doors, only to find the interior brimming with even greater numbers of the undead. With practiced precision, Lena targeted their weaknesses, felling many with swift strikes. Amid the clash, one of the zombies lunged toward Ayla, and again it was Lena who struck it down just in time. Light halted, his heart torn with regret. He had failed to protect her and nearly lost her forever. He swore to himself that he would never again let her face danger alone. Then he urged that they ascend to the second floor, for the number of zombies far exceeded the missing adventurers, and surely the cause must lie above. They climbed the staircase with caution, and there before them appeared a mysterious witch, dancing with eerie grace as she watched them from afar. It was clear she was the mastermind behind all that plagued the manor. Suddenly, another horde of zombies descended upon them, far stronger than those they had first faced. Ayla swiftly invoked her appraisal skill, discovering that these creatures had been tamed by someone. Light froze, bewildered and unable to grasp what was happening. At once, Lena explained that someone was controlling and directing them. Light searched the shadows with his eyes until he noticed fine threads attached to the zombies' bodies. Following them cautiously, the group was led into a pitch-dark chamber. Lena whispered with unease, "This is the head chamber." There appeared a mysterious girl who introduced herself as Dratena, bearing the title of the Black Swan. For a fleeting moment, Light felt relief at finding a living human at last. Yet before he could step toward her, waves of new zombies surged forth, filling the chamber. Ayla quickly appraised her, and the truth was revealed. She possessed the skill of necromancy, granting her dominion over corpses and beasts alike. Light attempted to offer cooperation, citing the mission they shared, but she refused without hesitation, declaring her purpose. She had come to kill him. Then she commanded her zombies to attack. When he asked why, her reply was chillingly brief. She was following orders. Light and Lena clashed with the first wave, but soon two figures emerged before them, Bork and Shera, Lena's companions from her earliest days. Lena faltered, her hands trembling, for she knew their strength well and could not bring herself to raise her blade against them. Seizing upon her hesitation, Dratena drove the zombies toward Ayla. Light rushed to shield her, but soon found himself surrounded from all sides, while Lena remained locked in combat with Bork and Shera. Her resolve weakened as memories flooded back, of how she had first met them at the guild, how they trained together until she rose to rank A. But in a decisive moment, she seized the threads of control, tore them apart, and struck them down with a sorrowful blow, releasing their souls from torment. Meanwhile, Light continued to battle the endless dead. He turned to Ayla, asking whether necromancy could create zombies from nothing. She shook her head, insisting it only controlled them. His confusion deepened. How then had so many arisen in this forsaken manor? Ayla attempted to appraise further, searching for the secret, but Dratena attacked her viciously. Enraged, Light ordered her to climb upon his shoulder so that he could shield her more closely. Elsewhere, the Holy Sister smiled with cryptic satisfaction. When her assistant asked the reason for her delight, she answered simply, she had seen a shadow pass across the moon. The scene returned to the manor. Light, carrying Ayla upon his shoulder, soared to the chamber's rafters, while she concentrated her appraisal upon the endless dead below. One by one she examined their skills, until at last her face paled. Among them she had found one, wielding the power of summoning. Her voice trembled as she revealed the truth. The zombie before them was none other than Count Montes himself. At that moment, Dratena realized that Light and his companions were drawing dangerously close to the truth. Suddenly, from afar, Light glimpsed a massive zombie advancing toward them. Ayla trembled in terror and screamed, "It is the Soul Harvester! Whoever it touches is instantly turned into a zombie." The monster charged at them with frightening speed, and Light leapt into the air to meet it. Yet he quickly realized that Dratena was controlling it as well. She revealed then that Count Montes had summoned this creature from the beginning, but he had paid dearly, for the summoning had twisted him into a zombie himself. Thereafter, he wielded the Harvester as his tool to turn adventurers into the undead. Light froze in shock, demanding, why would a successful adventurer like Montes choose such a path? Dratena only smiled with mocking disdain and replied that he knew far too little. She then spoke of the forbidden skills, abilities so dangerous that the mere possession of one condemned its wielder to hatred and persecution. Count Montes, she declared, had borne one of these, necromancy. At first, the people hailed him as a hero, applauding his strength and showering him with support. But as time passed, fear wormed its way into their hearts whenever they saw him summon beasts or wield his dreadful arts. Bit by bit, admiration turned to suspicion, and suspicion to hatred, until he was branded a traitor and cast out by all. The truth dawned upon Light. Montes had retreated into the manor to live alone, far from the world that despised him. Dratena confirmed it, adding that the guild never ceased sending adventurers under the pretext of monster surveys, when in truth their mission was his execution. Forced to defend himself, Montes struck back, turning them into zombies. Breathless, Light whispered, why had no one in the guild ever told them such a truth? But Dratena cut him off with a sly smile. Enough talk. let us play a little. She gave her command, and the zombies rushed upon them. Light braced himself, his thoughts racing, that perhaps his immunity from the skill fruit was the hidden key that allowed him to acquire unique powers. Perhaps this was the path that would lead him to become the strongest adventurer. The battle began, and soon they realized that the zombies repeated the same attacks mechanically. Mere puppets bound to Dratena's will. Light summoned the might of the Sword King, soaring into the air and striking with a technique that forced Dratena's attention away for a fleeting moment. Seizing the opportunity, Lina lunged at the Soul Harvester, and with the holy force of the Holy Sword Saint, she delivered a finishing blow that destroyed it utterly. Standing before Dratena, Lina declared she would not kill her, for there were questions that demanded answers. But before she could begin, Light charged at Count Montes, who still clutched threads of control, and struck with a final blow that ended his existence. Yet in that instant, Dratena moved swiftly, driving Montes to call upon his final reserve of power. Before collapsing, he summoned forth a colossal beast, one that loomed so vast its shadow consumed the chamber, crouching before their eyes like a nightmare given form. In that moment, the zombies vanished, replaced by a colossal dragon that lunged fiercely at Dratena. Lina trembled in shock, for she had never known such a beast dwelled here. Adventurers of rank C themselves avoided any confrontation with it, but Light sought to reassure her, declaring that if their skills were united, they could overcome it. Yet Ayla quickly warned them, explaining that the dragon's scales rendered its body impervious to sword strikes. Ignoring her caution, Light charged with all his might, only for his blade to shatter uselessly upon the monster's hide. Realizing the battle was hopeless, Lina began to devise a way to retreat. At that moment, Ayla produced one of the skill fruits, urging Light to eat it, hoping it might grant him new strength to save them. But in a sudden twist, a masked figure appeared from the shadows, seizing Dratena and vanishing as if he had never been there. Lina tried to stop Light, warning that the act was perilous. Even with his immunity to the fruit's poison, the skill might be forbidden. But Light was resolute, insisting there was no other choice. He swallowed the fruit, and soon after, Ayla's appraisal revealed his new ability, insect resistance. Despair filled Light, and he asked if the dragon bore any insect origin, but the answer was no. Determined, he demanded another fruit. Lina held off the dragon desperately to buy him time. He consumed 2 fruits at once, yet gained only 2 worthless skills, cat taming and sword hardness. His body convulsed with searing pain, his strength collapsing until he fell to the ground, paralyzed. Only one final chance remained, a 3rd fruit. As he reached for it, Lina's sword shattered beneath the dragon's strike. Her body flung violently across the chamber. Summoning the last of his will, Light devoured the 3rd fruit and hurled a massive stone at the dragon to draw its fury away from Lina. When she asked the result, Ayla announced with sudden joy, sleep dust, a power that forced all who inhaled it into slumber. With grim resolve, Light advanced upon the dragon, scattering the dust, yet the beast roared in fury, thrashing wildly and tearing the chamber apart as it fought against the drowsiness. Ayla shouted that the dust's range extended only 3 meters. With no other option, Light seized his broken sword, struck the ceiling above, and leapt upon the falling rubble to propel himself upward. Reaching the dragon's head, he released the dust directly into its maw. The monster shuddered, then collapsed into a deep and heavy sleep. Lina swiftly severed a piece of its body to serve as proof of their conquest, and together they fled before the manor crumbled to ruin around them. Mounting their horses, they rode toward the city, but exhaustion overcame Light, and as they reached its gates, he toppled from his steed, unconscious. Elsewhere, the masked figure delivered Dratena into the hands of the Holy Sister. She asked him what he thought of Light. His answer was cold and measured. I did not expect him to slay the dragon, yet I do not see him as a true threat. He will pose no real problem, not until he meets the one who has been foretold. The following morning, Ayla gathered some fruits and went to assist Lina in preparing the meal. Lina smiled gratefully, for she was taking on the duties of Light, who still lay bedridden. Soon enough, Light himself entered the kitchen with a wry grin, remarking, I did not die, but I am dreadfully bored. The two quickly lifted him back to his bed, insisting he continue to rest, though he protested that he was fine. Yet they were firm. His strength must first return. Before closing his eyes once more, he asked softly, "Where are you going?" Lina explained that she was heading to the guild to learn the details of their last mission and the story behind the appearance of the evil dragon. He tried to rise to join them, but Ayla assured him she would recount everything to him in full detail. When Lina and Ayla reached the guild, the clerk informed them that the meeting arranged for them would not begin for another 2 hours. Lina then suggested that they register Ayla formally as an adventurer, since they had time to spare. The idea surprised everyone, for she was still so young. Disheartened, Ayla whispered, "I feel like I don't belong here. I have no tools, no weapons, hands like the other adventurers, but Lena clasped her hands and reassured her, "You possess the appraisal skill. Without you, we could never have defeated the dragon." The hours passed quickly as they spent the time shopping. Ayla entered a jeweler's shop, where counterfeit goods filled the shelves, yet with her skill she discerned a true diamond amidst the fakes and purchased it, intending to craft a necklace. They also bought new clothes before returning to the guild. On their way to the meeting, Lena muttered under her breath, "I will not reveal everything. What matters most is uncovering the guild's role in all this. None but they knew of our mission. Someone among them must be behind what occurred." They entered the council chamber, where 4 of the guild's highest stood waiting. Flower Hat, the head of investigations, Tiger Beard, master of security, Gravekeeper, chief of finance, and lastly, the Holy Sister, supreme inspector and highest-ranking member who commanded the rest. Ayla tried to appraise their skills, but she could discern nothing. The Holy Sister asked that Lena begin her report of what had transpired with the evil dragon, but Lena interrupted her, declaring, "Before I answer, in the manor we faced a girl named Dratina, called the Black Swan. Do any of you know her?" The Holy Sister denied any knowledge, remarking that thousands of adventurers passed before her eyes and she could not remember every name. Flower Hat added that she would search the guild's records to be certain. The Holy Sister ignored the question, her tone turning grave. "What matters now is locating the dragon and dealing with it." At that, Flower Hat interjected, explaining that she had sent a scout bird to the manor, but it had found no trace of the dragon there. She added, "If we possessed a fragment of its body, however, we could track it down and uncover its location." At that very moment, Lena produced the dragon scale she had taken as proof. Before it could touch the table, Flower Hat lunged forward to seize it, but Lena stood firm, declaring that she would hand it over only on one condition, that she be allowed to see the guild's records. After a tense silence, the 4 council members agreed, even the Holy Sister herself, yet the latter clarified coldly that this did not mean she would personally take charge of the investigation. Flower Hat used her skills to examine the scale, then announced, 12 years ago, a girl gained the skill of necromancy after eating a skill fruit." Lena cut in quickly with a sharp question. "And who was responsible for the appraisal at that time?" The answer came without hesitation, "The Holy Sister." But the Holy Sister replied with icy calm, "I appraise more than 1,000 individuals each year. How could I possibly remember a single case from 12 years ago?" Her words were enough to plant seeds of doubt in Lena's heart. She began to realize there was something hidden, some unseen thread binding them all together. Before she could pursue her thoughts further, the Holy Sister announced formally, "The party of Luxeria is hereby stricken from the guild's records." Lena was shocked and demanded to know the reason. The answer came swiftly. Grouse had filed a complaint, claiming that Light had stolen a member from his party by force. At that moment, Light entered the chamber, confident that the guild would honor him for slaying the dragon. But his hope was crushed when he heard the verdict. He laughed bitterly and said, "And what of it? Even if you erase us from your records, the 3 of us will always remain Luxeria." Then the Holy Sister invoked her appraisal skill upon Light, and to her astonishment, what she saw made her demeanor change entirely. At once her tone shifted, and she declared that they would be permitted to continue. More than that, she assigned them a new mission, to slay a rank C monster, with a vast reward promised in return. Light accepted immediately, but Lena was left reeling, her suspicion deepening. She was certain this was nothing more than a trap. When the meeting ended, they received the mission details from the clerk. As the Holy Sister departed, Lena leaned close and whispered a warning to Light. "She is plotting something, and you are helping her carry it out." Ayla attempted to appraise the Holy Sister's skills, but once again, nothing could be revealed, leaving her even more unsettled. Just then, Gravekeeper interrupted, declaring that Light must pay a fine of 1,000 coins for entering the chamber armed. Light protested, explaining that the sword was broken, but the punishment only worsened. "Then the fine is 5,000 coins, for the sword belongs to the guild, and you have broken it." The clerk added that he would no longer be allowed to borrow another weapon, and that he must forge one suited to his skills. Lena explained that forging swords required long time and effort, then resolved to return to the city of her birth, hoping to find some means to aid him. She entrusted Ayla with caring for Light in the meantime. Together, the two went to the craftsman's quarter to seek a blacksmith's workshop. But they soon learned that most forges were under the Holy Sister's control, and none would help them. Rage burned within Light at such treachery, until an old man directed them toward the workshop of the legendary Smith Bolst, hidden in the city's western quarter. On their way, they saw a terrified girl fleeing as 3 youths pursued her. She stumbled and fell, and one of them raised his hand to strike her, but Light intercepted the blow. Enraged, the thugs turned on him. One rushed forward to attack, but Light drew forth his broken sword, invoking his skill upon it. He gripped it so fiercely that the weapon itself shattered in his hands. Terror seized the young men, and they fled in panic, dragging each other away. After the thugs had fled, the girl approached to thank Light and introduced herself. Her name was Monica. She invited them to her home for a drink, but Light declined, insisting he was in a hurry to reach the workshop of Bolst. She smiled lightly and said, "This is my home." She led them inside, where to their surprise, the place they had reached was none other than the very forge they had been searching for. Light glanced around, expecting to see craftsmen at work, but she answered simply, "There is no one else here. I do everything myself." The shock deepened when she revealed the truth, that she herself was the legendary Smith Bolst. She showed them some of her wares, holding up a frying pan pierced with 5 molds for pancakes, explaining that its price was 2,000 coins, but that she would sell it to them at half for saving her life. Light blushed awkwardly, admitting that he did not even like pancakes, his confusion mounting at the nature of the workshop, which looked far from a forge of blades. Monica laughed and explained, "It's true, I sell household tools." But when Light spotted an axe resting in the corner, he asked her to forge him a new one, saying he was a farmer and needed a proper tool. She studied his hand carefully to take its measure, then set to work, heating and shaping the metal with precision. Ayla, watching intently with her appraisal, discovered that Monica possessed the skill of supreme refinement, an ability of legendary caliber that allowed her to polish and forge metals to perfection. In the end, she crafted him a pair of sturdy shears suited for his farm work. Light admired the quality of the craft but could not restrain himself from saying with all seriousness, "I want a strong sword." Monica fell silent for a moment, then shook her head. "That is impossible. I despise swords, and I will not forge one for you." Light was taken aback, demanding heatedly why everyone had directed him to her if that were the case. She answered calmly, "Perhaps they meant the workshop next door." She guided them there, where her father was at work. She asked him to forge a sword for Light, but he erupted in anger. "So now you send customers to me because you refuse their requests, while you waste your time crafting frying pans?" A fierce quarrel broke out between them, and Monica stormed away in fury. Her father apologized to Light, but told him he was overwhelmed with orders, his work already booked for 6 months ahead, and could not help him. Light left the forge in dismay, uncertain what to do next. It was then that one of the workers approached him and introduced himself as Kane. Light recognized him at once, remembering his presence during the battle against Grouse. With bitterness, Light admitted that everyone tied to the Holy Sister now hated him because of that fight. But Kane smiled and said, "That is why I have come here, because the only ones not working under the Holy Sister's banner are Monica and her father." When Light asked why then Monica did not work alongside her father, Kane lowered his voice and revealed the truth. In the past, they worked together, and the Bolst family was renowned as legendary smiths. But years ago, their trade caravan was ambushed by bandits. Everyone aboard was slaughtered, including Monica's grandfather. When the culprits were caught, it was discovered that all the swords they carried had been forged by Monica's hand. From that day, her heart was scarred and filled with hatred for the making of swords. While they spoke within the forge, a man named Zamdo, one of the merchants of the Black Talon Syndicate, entered. He fixed his gaze upon Light for a long moment and said, "I feel as though I have seen you before." At that instant, Monica's father stepped out and demanded sharply why the man had come. Zamdo explained that he sought a standing order of weapons to be delivered weekly for an entire year. Kane protested immediately, pointing out that they could barely fulfill their current orders. Zamdo only smiled with cruel amusement. "Then we shall turn to Monica. She is the true legendary smith, and we will force her to make them for us." Light stepped forward to stop him, insisting that Monica did not forge weapons at all. Zamdo answered coldly, "We will persuade her, by force." Faced with the threat, Monica's father was compelled to agree against his will. Light understood then that the entire scheme was a pressure tactic, to use Monica as leverage until her father complied with their demands. Before departing, the old man cautioned Light not to tell her anything of what had transpired. That night they ate together at Monica's home. The mood was calm until Monica, learning of Ayla's appraisal skill, asked if she might work alongside her. Ayla gently refused, saying she preferred to stay with Light and his adventures. Elsewhere, Zamdo stood before the Holy Sister, requesting vast quantities of weapons in a short span of time. He agreed at once, and then mentioned that Light had been seen in the craftsman's quarter, suggesting he could be brought before her if she wished. She answered with a cold smile, "Send a spy to the security division. The important thing is that he come to me alive." After the meal, as Monica walked back toward the workshop, Zamdo's men blocked her path and seized her. Kane sprinted to Light, holding Monica's spectacles found at the forge door. Inside the case lay a short note. "If you wish to get her back, let Light come alone." As demanded by the note, Light went alone to the appointed place. Inside, Monica awoke to find herself bound in chains. Her captors told her plainly that she was nothing more than bait to lure Light into their hands, and that once he was caught, they would keep her imprisoned for the rest of her life, forcing her to forge weapons for them without end. At that very moment, an explosion thundered through the chamber, and Light burst in without hesitation. They unleashed a hail of projectiles and rushed at him all at once, but he only laughed calmly, then released the power of his sleep dust. With a single breath, the entire hall sank into slumber. Swiftly, he broke Monika's bonds and carried her away, returning her safely to her father, who embraced her with tears of gratitude. Meanwhile, Zamdo was on his way to his men, fearing that if they killed Light, the Holy Sister would be enraged with them, but he was stunned to find his men sprawled upon the ground, fast asleep. Later, Monika's father apologized to Light for dragging him into such peril, confessing that he had relied far too heavily on the merchants of the Black Talon. He vowed to cut ties with them, even if it cost him everything. Monika smiled and asked if that meant he would stop forging swords. He answered firmly that he would not close the forge that had stood for 25 years, but that from now on, he would seek out only honorable clients. That night, they agreed to remain together under one roof. As evening fell, Light found Monika still awake and sat beside her. She told him how, as a child, she had forged her first dagger, how her father had marveled at her gift, and how she refined her craft until she attained the legendary skill of supreme refinement. She spoke of the joy she felt in creating objects that brought happiness to people. But after her grandmother's death, everything changed. She discovered that some had used her swords for evil, and from that day she turned away from forging weapons. Then she asked him candidly if he had ever killed someone. He answered that he had slain zombies to protect Ayla. She admitted she no longer knew whether that was good or evil. But Light explained gently, swords are not evil in themselves. They are good, if wielded in the right place, for the right purpose. Elsewhere, Zamdo's assistant awoke to find himself bound, and before him stood Zamdo, asking in angry bewilderment, "What happened?" The man stammered, "I do not know." Light stood before us, and suddenly we all fell asleep. Zamdo smiled with cunning and ordered them to prepare a new plan, one that would finish Light at dawn. At morning, Light rose to Ayla's voice. They shared a simple breakfast, then noticed Monika absent and set out, carrying her meal to search for her. They found her in the fields. Light asked, astonished, "What are you doing here?" She smiled and replied, "The harvest will be abundant this year." Light then used his power to hasten the ripening of the crops, and Monika marveled that he possessed two skills at once. He explained that his fruit master granted immunity to the fruit's poisons, allowing him to hold more than one skill. She could hardly believe it. Suddenly, harsh knocking rang out, and they turned to see Zamdo and his men storming the workshop, beating Monika's father and the workers mercilessly. Light charged forward and told Zamdo, "It seems you have not learned your lesson." He tried to cast his sleep dust upon him, but Zamdo protected himself with a shield of crackling lightning. Electric power assaulted the forge as Zamdo unleashed bolts, smashing and scorching. Light ordered Monika to take Ayla and flee, then drew his sword and approached Zamdo, declaring, "That secret door you broke cost you dearly, so the wrecking of your workshop is payback for what you have done." Anger flared in Zamdo, and he answered coldly that he would not free Monika unless she forged weapons in her legendary manner, because her father's swords had fallen into ruin with time. He shoved her to the ground and stamped upon her viciously. Monika winced at the insult, for she and the other workers had poured their hearts into making tools. Zamdo then ordered that Monika and Light come with him quietly, to avoid further damage. Light answered with firm resolve, "I will hand you over to the authorities." He lunged at Zamdo, seized a sword from the floor, and attacked with all his strength, but the lightning shield around Zamdo repelled each blow, and the man retaliated with crackling spheres of electricity. He taunted, announcing, "To defeat you, I must fetter your movement, but that is not entertaining. I want you to feel pain beneath my strikes." He hurled more electric orbs, and Monika cried out for Ayla to appraise them at once. Ayla replied, "The spheres were forged of iron." Quickly, Monika flung an iron skillet from her array of household wares into Light's hands and urged, "Grab it, catch those spheres." Indeed, the plan succeeded in halting the attacks. Light seized the magnetized orbs that had been shocking him with lightning and hurled them away, regaining his balance and using his broken sword to deflect the unending strikes. Monika realized it could not last much longer. The blade was near its limit, and she resolved then and there that she would forge him a new sword, no matter the cost. She also understood that he was not fighting for his own sake, but for hers. Grasping Ayla's hand, she pulled her swiftly toward the forge. Meanwhile, Lena had arrived at the second city. The coachman, guiding the carriage, asked her, "Are you traveling alone, or have you come for the festival?" She answered curtly, "I am searching for someone." Back in the battlefield, Light pressed his assault against Zamdo, but to no avail. Zamdo unleashed a searing bolt of lightning aimed at Light's blade, expecting it to shatter instantly. Yet to his astonishment, it held firm. He struck again, lightning crackling through the air, but Light pressed forward, enduring the shocks as he gambled that his next strike would be solid enough to pierce through. Staggering, half consumed by the pain, he launched his attack, but the lightning tore through him with brutal force, and he collapsed, his body racked and faint. Clenching his grip anew, he gathered his last strength and unleashed a gale of raging wind through his blade. The strike cut past Zamdo's defenses, wounding him and driving him backward. Furious, Zamdo roared, "Enough games!" He summoned forth the lightning tiger, a colossal beast wreathed in crackling sparks that coiled around its body. The monster lunged at Light, seizing his sword between its fangs, while Zamdo struck from behind with devastating electric force. Light's body could endure no more, and he fell unconscious to the ground. From a distance, Monica watched the scene unfold, torn between saving her father and the workers. She saw them bound behind the gates of the forge, guarded by men ready to strike. Seizing the shears Light had once crafted for her, she hurled herself into the fray to distract the guards. They chased after her, seeking to seize her, while Ayla slipped inside to free Monica's father. But Zamdo's assistant appeared suddenly, grabbing Ayla from the other side. At that moment, Monica hurled iron plates to the ground and invoked the power of her supreme refinement. The metal beneath the guards' feet melted into molten steel, dragging them down. With a second touch, she hardened it once more, trapping them fast where they stood, unable to move. Prisoners within the very iron itself. Monica rushed into the forge, finding Zamdo's assistant clutching Ayla. The young girl pointed quickly to a shining stone upon the ground, and in an instant Monica appraised it, then hurled it at him. The brilliant glare reflected sharply into everyone's eyes, forcing them shut, and the assistant collapsed unconscious from the blinding flash. At once Monica's father leapt upon him and bound him tightly with rope. Afterward, Monica asked her father's permission to use the forge to craft a sword for Light. He answered firmly, "Do as you wish. You are one of the smiths of this house." Her father began melting the metal swiftly, leaving her the task of shaping it. Memories surged within Monica of the days when she worked beside him, forging swords with pride. For a moment she hesitated. Was what she was doing right, or was it wrong? Yet she overcame her doubts and finished shaping the blade, until it gleamed with radiant brilliance. The workers cheered, for they had accomplished the forging in record time. They rushed out of the forge to find Light lying upon the ground. Monica tossed the sword to him, but Zamdo sneered, "You are too late." At that decisive moment, Light grasped the blade and rose once more. He called to Ayla for a skill fruit, and she hurled one toward him. Yet fate turned cruel, and it landed in Zamdo's hand instead. All stared in shock as Zamdo forced it upon Light, laughing. "Do you not know that those who eat more than one fruit die?" But the truth overturned the trap. Strength returned to Light instantly, and the mark of a new skill burned upon him. He cried defiantly, "You have fallen into my snare. I am immune to the skill fruits. I can consume as many as I wish, and gain power without end." Ayla appraised him at once, her voice trembling as she announced, "It is Flameburst. He can release fire from his very hands." Zamdo staggered back in disbelief, then snarled in fury, "The Holy Sister was right to take interest in you, but I will stake my life on this battle." He summoned a colossal lightning lion, its body wreathed in blazing sparks, while Light wrapped his blade in fire and charged with fearless might. The clash was titanic, fire dragon against lightning beast. The explosion shook the earth, flames and sparks engulfing the battlefield. Both warriors stood panting after the strike, but then Zamdo collapsed, unconscious, falling heavily to the ground. In Light's hands, the sword shattered once again. He turned to Monica, apologizing for breaking it, but she only smiled with fierce resolve and said, "I will forge you a new sword worthy of your strength." And she thanked him, for he had saved them all. Before Zamdo's men could strike again, Tigerbeard, the guild's head of security, appeared, binding them with chains of air. He apologized to Monica's father for his delay, explaining that someone had interfered with the report's delivery. Her father answered with calm relief, "It is no matter. Light has already ended it." Tigerbeard smiled as his eyes fell upon the young hero. "I know him. He is the rising brave who stood against the evil dragon." At that moment, a bird arrived at the forge carrying a message from Lena. She informed them that she would soon reach the city of Dratina, though it would take some time, and she reassured them that she was safe. Monica looked at the letter and remarked, "So this is Lena, the bearer of the Holy Sword's tale." Ayla confirmed with a nod, saying she was part of their team, then quickly sent a reply to Lena, warning her that a member of the Black Swan had attempted to kill them and that there was someone aiding him. Meanwhile, Lena arrived at the city, bearing only a single torn wing of the swan as proof. She traveled onward to the fairy capital, searching for a trace of Dratina. When she asked two men standing nearby about the name, they trembled at the mention and quickly retreated, leaving her puzzled. She tried questioning another young woman, but fear seized her as well, and soon everyone avoided her. It was then that she noticed a young man staring at her intently, as if carrying a message he wished to deliver. She followed after him, suspicion stirring within her heart. Was he a criminal, perhaps sent by the Holy Sister to spy on her? If so, she resolved, she would have to dispose of him. The trail led her into a narrow alleyway where the path abruptly ended and the young man vanished. Suddenly, he appeared behind her, hurling a rope that bound her tight. Instantly, Lena drew her sword and slashed it apart, then struck at him fiercely. From a single clash, she realized his strength. He was surely of rank C. He spoke in a cold voice, saying that her use of the sword was fitting, but he would not allow someone who looked like a spy to run rampant through the city. At that moment, another figure emerged from behind them. It was a woman who had clearly been lying in wait. Yet to Lena's surprise, she introduced herself formally as Flower Hat. Then she learned the truth. The young man was Yuan, one of her subordinates, and he had been tasked with investigating the matter of Dratena. Flower Hat told them that her mission too was to search for Dratena. Lena was taken aback and asked, "But how? Are you not in the Holy Sister's service?" Flower Hat smiled and replied, "I answer to no one. My task is gathering information alone." She revealed that Dratena's presence was linked to the mission to halt the evil dragon, and that the scale Lena had taken from the beast was still decaying, the sole remaining proof being Dratena's involvement in its summoning. She warned plainly, if the dragon were to appear suddenly within the city, it would be a catastrophe. Countless lives would be lost. Then she cautioned Lena not to question the townsfolk directly, lest she draw attention to herself. Flower Hat and Yuan prepared to depart, but Lena called after them and insisted, "I cannot gather this information alone. I will join you." After a moment's hesitation, they agreed. On one strict condition, she must refrain from interfering with their methods. Lena accepted, and Yuan sneered, "Why let her join? She will be no use." Flower Hat answered calmly, "She is the only one who knows Dratena's features. That is a gift none of us possess." Together they went to a small restaurant. Flower Hat asked the proprietor for 3 plates of fresh fish, caught the day before. Lena frowned. "Are we not on an investigation?" But Flower Hat said nothing. Instead, she led them to a secret passage beneath the building, where an informant awaited. Yuan handed him a pouch of coins and demanded the details of Dratena, her habits, her whereabouts. The informant spoke. She came from a wealthy house, but when she gained the skill of summoning spirits at the age of 6, everything changed. Her mother died suddenly. Their trade declined. Whispers spread that the family was cursed. Her father cast her out, blaming her forbidden power for the misfortune. Since then, the villagers shunned her and feared even to speak her name. Flower Hat asked, "And who first supported her?" He answered, "The Holy Sister. She took her into the sacred city herself." When Flower Hat inquired about her current location, the informant replied, "She is in this city." Lena froze and whispered, "You mean she is still alive?" The man grinned with wickedness and said, "Who said she had ever died?" A cold dread gripped Lena as she murmured, "Then who was the one who died in Count Montes's manor? Did she survive that place?" The informant leaned forward. "I can tell you exactly where she is, but that comes at a price." Yuan seized him by the throat, pressing a dagger to his chest, and growled, "The place, or you will not leave here alive." The man stammered in terror. "In the theater quarter. She prepares for a fairy dance there." Meanwhile, Dratena sat within her home as her attendant urged her to rest, warning of the pain in her injured foot. She refused with stubborn resolve. "The Holy Sister recommended me to be the dancer. I must be ready." Elsewhere, Yuan explained that the fairy dance was a sacred rite held on the final day of the Festival of Fairies. He recounted how, 1,000 years past, the Fairy King had defended the city's lake from a monster onslaught, and since that hour the day became an annual celebration. Each year one fairy was chosen to perform the dance. This year, the choice had fallen upon Dratena. They arrived at the training stage where rehearsals took place, but the guards barred their passage for lack of entry permits. Flower Hat smiled and told them they were fairies come to dance, accompanied by their personal musician. The guards let them pass. Lena whispered, "But I cannot dance," and Flower Hat laughed. "And do you think Yuan knows how to play?" Inside, Lena caught sight of Dratena moving with the light, trembling grace of the fairy dance. Yuan stepped forward and bound her. Yet Lena stood stunned, asking herself, what connects a girl like her to the head of investigations? When Flower Hat demanded to know where the evil dragon had gone, Dratena replied coldly, "It was never under my control from the moment I summoned it." Flower Hat decided then to take her to the sacred city and use a spell tracking skill to trace the dragon's trail. But Dratena begged for 2 days. Only enough time to perform the fairy dance she had dreamed of since childhood. Flower Hat refused sternly. Lena implored her to hear her out this once. Annoyed, Flower Hat reminded Lena of their agreement not to interfere with her methods. Turning to Dratena, she declared, "If you do not come with us willingly, we will take you by force before everyone." At that, Lena drew her sword, sliced the bonds from Dratena, seized her hand, and fled the stage. Yuan lunged to seize them again, but they slipped free. Because of the injury in her foot, Dratena stumbled along the way. Lena lifted her and used her jump skill, vaulting across rooftops to put distance between them and the pursuers. Yuan gave chase, but suddenly lost their trail amid the twisting alleys. Flower Hat ordered him to remain calm. "Do not worry. Dratina will not leave the city before the festival ends, and it will be easy to catch her then. Aboard a small boat, a poet recited an ancient legend to his companions about the Fairy King. He pointed toward a massive stone before them and explained that beneath it lay one of the king's followers and that the festival of fairies was held each year in his honor. Then he whispered with warning, if that follower were ever to awaken from his slumber, the world itself would collapse. Elsewhere, Light continued his relentless training. Ayla tried to stop him, urging him to rest, but he refused with unyielding determination, bent on pushing his limits. Monica, meanwhile, remained engrossed in her forge, devoting all her strength to crafting a new sword worthy of Light's growing power. At the same time, Flower Hat released flocks of birds across the night sky to search for Lena and Dratina, using her gift of nocturnal vision. But the birds soon returned trembling, as if they had seen the unthinkable. She grasped a withered rose in her hand, invoked her skill to examine it, and recoiled with grave concern. Turning to Yuan, she said, if what I fear is true, then our only hope lies in Lena and Dratina. Meanwhile, the two girls wandered the streets, searching for a place to hide until the time came for the fairy dance. Lena urged them to find somewhere far from Flower Hat's eyes, but Dratina stunned her by saying, I will ask for the Holy Sister's help. Lena stopped cold and demanded sharply, what is your connection to her? And why did you attack us in Count Montez's manor? I came here only to learn the reason. She pressed further. I have learned everything about your childhood, but what I cannot understand is why you still use the bodies of Shera and Bork against us. Dratina gave no answer, only saying quietly, you will understand everything yourself when the time comes. As they continued, two cheerful children dressed in fairy costumes stopped before them, but Dratina's joy turned to sorrow when their mother rushed over, dragging them away in anger, scolding them never to approach her, as though she were a curse. Suddenly, screams tore through the streets, and panic swept the crowd. Monsters appeared, flooding into the city. Lena leapt upon one, cutting it down with a decisive strike, while Dratina gasped, how did monsters enter here? Is not the power of the fairy stone supposed to keep them out? Then, before their eyes, a young girl nearly fell victim to a beast. Dratina unleashed her necromancy skill, seizing control of the creatures and saving the child. But then they saw a boy with a horn upon his head, surrounded by the same monsters. Lena rushed recklessly to his side, placing herself in danger. Dratina intervened again, pulling her back and warning, do not be so reckless again, or you will die. Yet the danger only deepened. A black fog swelled into the sky, and from it emerged a strange entity, the Fog Beast. Yuan dashed forward, binding it fast, and together with his allies, tore it apart. Afterward, Flower Hat ordered the citizens to flee swiftly to the church of Fatio, declaring that the place was too dangerous to remain. Lena and Dratina approached her in shock and asked, why the church specifically? Flower Hat answered in short, firm words, because it holds a defensive power, an aura of light that shields it from monsters and their assaults. Dratina froze, stunned. But how? I have never heard of such a thing before. Thus, they all resolved to head toward the fog, which they now realized was thickening in the middle of the lake. Flower Hat suggested they go there at once. Dratina turned to her in alarm. Do you understand what you are asking? Flower Hat answered steadily, I do. So they boarded their small boat and set out. Flower Hat explained that the monsters were emerging through a gate and that someone had deliberately opened it. Dratina cried in disbelief. Impossible! The stone has always protected the city. Flower Hat replied, there is a force that reverses its effect, a counterforce to its gravity. That is why I have resolved to destroy the fairy stone. Dratina gasped. That is the bearer of earth. It must not be touched. But Flower Hat answered sadly, I have no choice. If I do not destroy it, I cannot save the city. Their words clashed fiercely, leaving Dratina stunned into silence, while even Lena wondered in confusion how such a thing could be destroyed. Suddenly, the poet who had earlier been upon the boat appeared and said, to destroy the stone on its day of festival is a peril beyond measure. Flower Hat turned sharply on him. So you are the cause of this? The poet replied, wait one moment. Then he summoned from the gate a colossal monster. Lena lunged upon it and slashed its arm, but the sheer force of its blow sent her flying. She crashed down upon the poet, crushing him, until Yuan hurled his ropes to snatch her back onto the boat. The man's form shifted, revealing his true self. He confessed that his name was Argos, and his mission was vengeance and the reclamation of the earth. That was the reason he had called forth the beast. Then, with a roar, he summoned an army of monsters all at once and set them against the group. Flower Hat commanded her allies to destroy the stone quickly, that the summoning gates might be closed. Yuan dashed to restrain the beasts, but the water hindered him and he struggled. Suddenly, all beheld a unicorn transform into a staircase of crystal that reached toward the fairy stone. Lena climbed swiftly up the crystalline steps. As the battle raged, Argos shone with furious power and swung at her, but she parried and struck back with a preemptive blow. In that instant, forbidden tomes were revealed. Flower Hat explained that there were 48 secret volumes sealed beneath the sacred city for their danger, and that she alone could read them. She seized the Tome of Ice and the Tome of Stone, unleashing their power upon the monsters. She conjured a magical barrier that trapped them within, then urged her comrades to hurry and destroy the stone. Lena searched desperately for another way, longing that light were there beside her, but no other path remained. Summoning all her strength and courage, she struck with everything she had, hurling her energy upon the stone. With a thunderous crack, the fairy stone shattered before their eyes, leaving all stunned at the sight of its ruin. Suddenly, vast gates tore open across the heavens, and from them Argos summoned a terrifying force, known as the King of the Sea. It was none other than the evil dragon itself. It descended upon them with a torrent of fiery breath, the heat so fierce it weakened them all, before turning its wrath upon the city, spreading ruin in its wake. Flower had assured them that the townsfolk had been fully evacuated, yet Dratena's eyes welled with tears as she beheld the fairy stage engulfed in flames, her childhood dream reduced to ashes. Lena looked at her with firm resolve and urged her to rise again. With clenched fists, Dratena steeled herself once more. Elsewhere, an old elder whispered a desperate prayer that the church still stood, and that the fairy stone might shield them. Beside him, a young child's voice rang clear, declaring she had read of this very moment in an ancient tome, the tale of the fairy king's battle with the beasts, and that a savior would appear at the decisive hour. On the battlefield, Flower Hat strained to maintain her magical cage around the monsters, commanding Yuan to strike down the remnants, but her strength soon failed, and she fell to her knees. Argos laughed in cruel mockery, continuing his merciless destruction of the city. Dratena turned to Lena and cried, "We cannot prevail unless we unite, all four of us." Lena raised her sword and answered with resolve, "Hold the dragon for 5 seconds only, and I will finish this." Dratena unleashed her necromancy, summoning the fallen beasts to her side. She fused them into a towering colossus that grappled the dragon, binding it for precious seconds. In that instant, Lena seized her chance, darting forward like lightning, and with every ounce of strength drove her blade deep into the dragon's neck. For a heartbeat she believed it was over, until Argos's laughter thundered through the air. The beast rose again as if untouched, its eyes blazing with fury. Flower Hat shouted a dire warning, "Be careful, this one has not fallen yet." But before her words were complete, a new wave of fire erupted from the dragon's maw, stronger than any before, shaking the ground beneath them as if the world itself would collapse. In that moment, Argos reshaped the dragon, standing defiantly, and warning them never to dare oppose his destruction of the city. He unleashed a storm of massive fireballs. Within seconds, Flower Hat realized the truth. Argos had used his skill to reanimate the dragon anew. Desperately, she rifled through her arcane tomes, her fingers flipping furiously across their pages, until she uncovered the secret. What Argos wielded was not mere summoning, but the forbidden art of possession. To slay the dragon, they must first defeat Argos himself. Lena called to her comrades. One must distract him, while she would strike his neck. As Flower Hat analyzed the battle, she discerned that the summoning of dragon and beasts was powered not by ordinary skill but by a force altogether different. Realizing her danger, Argos ordered the dragon to unleash a devastating blow upon her. She countered with fire and stone, but his power overwhelmed hers. Yuan leapt in, saving her at the last moment, dragging her clear of the center and leaving the battlefield to Dratena and Lena. The dragon roared and exhaled its lethal flame. Dratena soared upward, calling upon her necromancy, but her effort failed to bind it. Lena rushed to her aid, casting a radiant barrier that deflected 2 blasts in succession, yet even that collapsed before the beast's might. Despair closed in upon them. All felt the battle was lost, but Lena refused surrender. She strode to the center of the field, her spirit blazing, and invoked the stance of the Holy Sword Saint. In that moment, a strange radiance enveloped her. She found herself beside the unicorn child, beholding a vision of legend, the fairy king himself battling the beast that once sought to ravage the city. She returned to reality with luminous wings unfurled, new strength coursing through her veins. She launched at the dragon, her shining blade severing its first arm in a single stroke, leaving Dratena astonished, and the Holy Sister watching in awe. Dratena declared with trembling voice that after every calamity, the fairy king granted wings and the sword of purification to a chosen one. Argos shouted in defiance, "It is useless!" But before he could act, Lena struck again, severing the dragon's second arm. At Flower Hat's command, Yuan hurled her back into the heart of the fray. With relentless fury, Lena pressed the attack, her newfound power driving the dragon backward. In desperation, Argos turned from her, focusing instead on his true aim, the city's church. He hurled the dragon forward to shatter its final protective barrier, but Lena stood in his path, intercepting the strike, and with every ounce of her courage she drove her radiant blade into the beast's core. With a thunderous cry, the dragon fell, its body collapsing. The terror ended at last. At that moment, Lena stood before Argos and demanded the reason for his actions. He twisted his lips into a crooked smile, muttering inwardly that she must have been a pawn of the Holy Sister, the one who had promised him aid, only now to betray him. Rage clouded his face as he hissed, "I should never have trusted such a manipulative woman." He cast a dark incantation and in an instant vanished, fleeing into the shadows, leaving behind only a grim vow, "I will return again." The radiance around Lena faded, and the power bestowed by the unicorn child slipped from her grasp. Exhausted, she sat upon the ground, whispering her thanks for his aid. Flower Hat approached, tending to her wounds as well as Dratena's. Trembling with humility, Dratena said softly, "All credit is yours, Lena. I did nothing." But Lena smiled gently and replied, "I could never have triumphed alone. You were my strength beside me elsewhere." Light pushed his training to the point of exhaustion. Ayla came bearing food, pleading that he rest even a little, but he refused, driving himself harder. Monica sat before her tools, anger gnawing at her, for she still could not craft a blade worthy of Light. Her father came to her with an encouraging smile and said, "Patience. A great sword is not born easily. If you truly wish to forge something fit for him, you must know his strength firsthand. Travel with him, and you will see." Meanwhile, Flower Hat revealed to Lena and Dratena that Argos had lost the talisman from which he drew his power. It belonged to the ancient civilization of Zelim, each symbol upon it marking a skill tied to Argos. Only one such relic existed in the world. When Lena asked about the inverted bat symbol, Flower Hat explained it was called the Instrument of Reversal, the cause of everything, for it had twisted the fairy stone's purifying power into a dark force that drew in the beasts. Anxious, Lena asked, "Does this mean the danger is ended?" Flower Hat nodded. "Yes, it is finished now." Then she questioned the strange power that had surged within her during the battle. Lena answered that it had come from the unicorn child, who had been with her throughout the fight. Suddenly, a brilliant light burst forth from the fairy stone. From the glow appeared the fairy king himself, naming himself Obel. He declared that it was he who had granted Lena her power, through Siren, the unicorn who had been sealed within the stone for centuries. Lena asked in awe, "And what were those visions I saw in the midst of the battle?" Obel answered, "What you saw were no illusions, but true memories, our battles against the beasts, our sacrifices to protect this land. Long ago, the earth itself was reduced to ash, only to heal again, after centuries." He explained that after those wars, one among them had to remain sealed within the stone to prevent the catastrophe from recurring. Siren had volunteered, watching over the world from within, until the recent peril compelled him to send forth a fragment of himself to aid Lena. All were moved by the depth of such sacrifice. Before departing, Obel requested that they perform the fairy dance in honor of Siren, for it was the joy he cherished most. Dratena agreed at once, exclaiming that she and Lena would perform it together. But Lena, shy and hesitant, protested. "But I cannot dance." Dratena smiled gently. "It is simple. I will teach you." The following night, they stood before the people of the city, side by side, performing the dance. Hearts swelled with joy, eyes brimmed with tears. The townsfolk's view of Dratena changed at last, as they remembered how she had risked herself to protect them. At the finale, Lena stepped down from the stage to watch, leaving Dratena to complete the dance alone. In his final vision, Obel appeared once more, offering thanks for her beautiful performance. Then he turned to Lena and said, "Take care of Siron, let him see the world. Soon, your wings and the sword of purification will fade, but his memory will remain within you." With his last words, he vanished with the fading light, and Lena suddenly collapsed, unconscious upon the ground. After some time, Lena awoke from her faint and returned to the rest of the group. There, the innkeeper thanked her for helping them defeat the dragon, insisting that the credit belonged to her and to the Holy Sister, who had sent them weapons at the critical moment. Lena and Flower Hat froze in shock, asking him again to be certain. He nodded. Yes, she sent them through the merchants of the Black Bird. Dratena raised her brows in surprise. "What is strange about that? The Holy Sister has always been kind to us." But Flower Hat replied firmly, "The distance from the sacred city to this place is far too great. Even if news traveled quickly, it would have been impossible for the weapons to arrive in time, unless the Holy Sister had known beforehand what would happen." Yuan interjected, "You mean she knew the fairy stone would be destroyed?" Flower Hat confirmed, "Exactly." Then she asked them, "Do any of you truly know the Holy Sister's skill?" Lena answered, "Evaluation." Flower Hat laughed bitterly, "No. clairvoyance. A silence fell over them until she continued. Yes, she sees the future. When she told you that you were the saint of the sword after eating the fruit of skills, she was not measuring your talent. She was glimpsing your future. Do you think the dragon's appearance and the destruction of the fairy stone were coincidence? Who is the common thread between it all? Was it not Lena and Dratina? Dratina refused to believe her words, clinging to her loyalty to the Holy Sister. Yet Flower Hat told her plainly that she would be going with Lena to another site of investigation. Grief weighed on Lena's heart as she thought of all the years spent in the Holy Sister's service. A woman who had seen everything, hidden everything, and plotted only to erase light. Still, Lena agreed to follow Flower Hat. Dratina at first refused to betray the Holy Sister, but at last accepted to accompany them, determined to learn the truth with her own eyes. Before their departure, Lena insisted on first helping to rebuild the ruined city and contacting Light and Ayla. At that time, Light continued his relentless training with the new Flame Spark skill, resolved to master it no matter the cost. As he trained, a glowing orb delivered a message from Lena. They spoke at length, and he recounted all that had happened, telling her he still awaited his new sword. She replied that she was occupied and could not return yet, but once finished, she would return immediately. He told her then, "Tomorrow I will take on a rank C quest while I wait for you." Meanwhile, the Holy Sister spoke to her attendant, satisfied that events in the fairy city had unfolded exactly as she foresaw. Only one matter remained, the elimination of Light. The attendant asked nervously, "Will his existence change your plans for the future?" The Holy Sister commanded her to keep this secret sealed. In the forge, Monica at last finished Light's new sword, naming it Mora, and also gifted him a new outfit befitting his strength. He thanked her deeply and prepared to set out, only to learn that she intended to accompany him. Surprised, he asked why, and she answered with resolve, "I want to see for myself how you wield this blade, so that I can craft for you one even stronger, perfectly attuned to your skills." He smiled and agreed, and together, they set forth toward their next quest. At the city gates, they were met by a new adventurer of rank C, Signa, who introduced herself as a party member assigned by the guild to join their mission. And so, the first season of Light's story comes to an end. If you enjoyed this tale, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you will be the first to witness season 2.